Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Age of Geek, the podcast. We stop laughing, Jake.
I didn't say. I'm sorry.
I am
Can't take you
so
anywhere.
I am so happy to be here tonight to talk about Black superheroes that we should know more about. We really wanted to do something. I don't want to say for Black History Month because this is something
You
we
can
should
say
all
it.
know
That's totally
about.
what it is. It's
But
okay.
for Black History Month, like I feel like we are getting more and more diversity, but why not know more and be better at knowing more diverse people? Because that's what we are striving to do. And they're kick ass. So, well, most of them, a large majority of them. So, that is what we are here
Probably
to
a
do.
similar ratio as white superheroes. I mean, really, when you think about it, Steph, some superheroes just in general are really great, and some are really not.
I don't know. I bet it's a wider ratio. I mean, we have Calendar Man. That's
What is Calendar Man?
Well, at least you've got a condiment, man.
I don't know if that's something to go write home about.
I'm just saying. I mean, they're both Batman villains, Collin.
Yeah.
They were they in Suicide? They were in a movie just briefly.
Calendar Man was.
Oh, do you know what movie
Kind
I'm
of
thinking of? The Lego Batman movie.
I was gonna say Lego Batman is
There
the
we
movie.
go.
That you're...
The Lego Batman movie has a bunch of villains that you're like, who are these humans?
I only remember that because when Condiment Man was on there, people were like, "Did they make that up for the Lego Batman movie?" No.
I think there's a line in it. We recently watched it with my kiddo. There's a line in it that said, all these characters are real. You can go look it up. So
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm literally on Calendar Man's Wikipedia page right now, and I'm just some of these pictures.
We have already
All
spent more time on both of these characters than we need to for this episode.
You're not wrong.
tonight we are joined by a regular crew, but we also have a guest joining us today, my friend Brian, and I shouldn't point. There we go.
Nice.
Yes.
First
Brian,
try.
give us a little, just a little brief bio about you.
Oh,
and why I would ask you here tonight.
Why would you ask?
Other than I love you.
Me here tonight. So brief bio about me. I've been fortunate enough to be raised around comics, come up around comics, and this has to do with everything from comic book stores, that whole kind of culture, comic shops, and convention shows, trade shows, that sort of thing, and just kind of moving along in my evolution. It was always about action figures, comic books, video games, and then video games kind of really became a focus. So from working around comic book stores and working around San Diego Comic-Cons and what have you, it became about releasing a video game, focusing on studying video games, and then landing in the U and continuing my studies to where I am now, among some of my people, the culture as it is said. So it's just something that comics are something that I've always just been around, been fascinated by, and just to kind of give you a little anecdote, a little history about me. One of my first Comic Cons, I was fortunate enough to attend the Eisner Awards, where I was able to see Will Eisner himself speak at what would have been his last Eisner Awards before we lost a talent, a major mind. Responsible for what we understand as a medium of comics, just to kind of give you a little idea about me, and then
I definitely know who that is.
Yes, it's nerding out. I'm sorry. Did I?
I definitely know who that is. Who is that?
Will Will Eisner was. Are you being serious?
I am. I'm so
She's being serious. She is, and it's totally cool.
Will Eisner was the creative who coined the term, specifically sequential art, and would go on to contribute to comics. But the most notable contribution would be the Spirit. And the Spirit just through so many mechanisms of his storytelling, excuse me, still very much endures today. So yeah,
very cool.
And the
I'm actually
Eisner
going to touch on the Spirit
Awards,
in a few minutes.
and the Eisner Awards, Brian, they're like the Oscars, right, of comic book
absolutely.
creators
Absolutely.
and things like that. So
Just
it's a
more
big deal.
clarification. Just absolutely. I couldn't put it any better, Jake. The Oscars of comics medium, no doubt.
If it's not Jim Lee, I don't know much about it. And that's a joke because Jim Lee is just the man right now. Anyways,
we love you, Steph. So glad you're here.
Yes. So yeah, I've known Brian for a few years now, and every time we sit down to talk about comics, video games, it's like I say this, it's like an hour discussion because of just the passion that he has for it. So I'm really excited to have you here tonight.
Excited to be here. Thank you.
So we talked a little bit if we wanted to do like book reports or like a free-for-all, and we kind of talked about doing a free-for-all, but then Robert came in with his slideshow throwing off the plan.
I believe this is what we call an overachiever.
And I feel like that would be a fantastic place to start.
Oh, wow. Okay, just like that.
Yeah.
Boom.
Okay, well, yeah. Okay, well, hello and welcome to my TED Talk. Actually, this kind of stemmed from Steph and I coming out and having a conversation about wanting to do something for Black History Month and keeping it kind of geeky. And, you know, what's more geeky than Black heroes and superheroes? I'm like, not much. So here we are. I also did a talk like this a few years back at FanX, but it was a little broader in diversity, not just Black and African American characters, but pretty much across the board. We're looking at how recently in sequential art, characters of color have come to prominence or have even been featured in media. So with that in mind, I'm going to just go ahead and jump into what I got.
And we're going to try to narrate some of these slides as well for the audio version of the show.
That is perfect. Let's see.
But if you want to see them, you need to come to our YouTube channel and then subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss great visual stuff like this ever again.
YouTube.com/supporters. Age of
well, we're going to try this again because that did not work at all.
Yeah.
Collin, you're a tech guy. You should know these things.
It's there. Or you can just go to youtube.ageofgeek.com because I created a hyperlink. It's great. Go there.
I definitely know what a hyperlink is.
Mm-hmm.
Technology, it's great.
URL, web address, whatever you want to call it.
There you go.
Wow. I am going to defer for a minute. I'm going to change computers and do it on a different computer because this one is being slightly difficult.
Yeah, no problem.
Not playing nicely with it. I know it's totally rude.
Do you need IT, Rob?
Collin, I do. I do indeed.
Cool.
I appreciate your offering IT. Instead, I'm just going to drop this into another computer and go from there. So give me a minute. I will be right back.
Not a problem. Do we want to continue on, or do we want to just wait a few minutes and edit this out?
We can continue on.
Okay. I'll edit that out.
We gave two totally different answers.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm just interested. So here's where I'm coming from. I don't know that I have a whole lot to add to this conversation just because my knowledge of Black superheroes is probably pretty surface level, just meaning like I'm familiar with the stuff that shows up in the big books. I'm familiar with what's been in the MCU. I feel like it kind of goes in a couple of different categories where like I feel like we see a lot of black versions of white superheroes. We see black superheroes that have kind of stepped in to take on the mantle from a white superhero, and then we've got originals. Um, I just I'm interested to know more about who some of those original characters are. And I don't know if those categories are too simplistic. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm really interested to diving into tonight.
Yeah, I'm in a very very similar space. Like I I don't know the comics, right? I know what's come
Colin's a
up
movie guy.
out of movies, out of TV shows, out of video games, and so I see what the media lets us immediately see, right? And unfortunately, there's just not as strong of a presence as there could be from these other shows and movies.
What's really interesting is we're just now getting to a point, and I mean literally just now, where we're beginning to understand what's beneath the surface of the iceberg. We're so there's so many contributions and works being done as we speak to uncover so many aspects of what it actually means to um, publish a black superhero, what it means to be a creative force behind a black superhero, and like you said, we're already thankful that we have vehicles like the MCU and that there has been a major push for diversifying and expanding the spectrum. But there's so much more coming in. And one of the points I wanted to bring up, or one of the my notes is there's an amazing book called The Invisible Men, and The Invisible Men is about the black creatives that would have been working for different publishing houses in the day, and we're talking literally, you know, um, pre and post World War II, and just accounts, works that we would have never have known or understood if not for the research done. And one of those figures is actually Matt Baker. Matt Baker is the creator of a superhero, a black superhero who is historically credited as being the first black superhero published in a major commercial book, Voodoo, Voodah, Voodoo. And what's interesting about Voodoo is it's very much in the immediate. Your first impression is going to be like a Tarzan archetype, but he's black. He has a darker skin tone on the page, and what would end up happening, interestingly enough, maybe 4 issues into his appearance, he reappears as a white character. And so you're dealing with everything that has to do with the pushback of the day and the just the mindset of the times as well. And I'm always a major proponent. I believe truly that if you want to understand your heroes, if you want to understand comics thoroughly, you need to understand the people and the minds behind them as well. So just that's just not even saying much to begin with, but it's a start.
Mhm.
So was he intended to be a black character? Was he intended to be white and the print was
No. Intended to be a black character. The outcome was results or a result of essentially we're not going to be able to sell this character. We're not going to be able to distribute this, we're not going to be able to, keep our advertisers happy. Things of that nature, or ended up to the character being reintroduced as a white character.
Right.
I am curious, which character did I miss?
So this was. Are you familiar with Matt Baker's Vuda? We're talking, and we're going back, taking it back, 1945.
I am not.
That was just a little bit before his time.
Just barely.
I can't help myself.
So and just again, we were discussing. I was bringing up. Are you familiar with Robert? Have you heard about the? I want to say it's published by Penguin, but the Invisible Men.
Yes. The comic artists and creators who were never heard of or never known to be black. Yes, it's actually a great book. I recommend it to everybody.
Exactly. So Matt Baker's story and his. I was just trying to make a point that a lot of these stories, a lot of these interactions are just now coming to the surface outside of what we understand as mainstream Black superheroes and Black creators.
I was hoping what I had shared, Robert, while you were gone was just I'm hoping to go deeper because I really have a surface understanding. Like I am familiar with the Miles Morales, the John Stewarts, and I feel like the three categories that I'm familiar with are you've got the black versions of the white superheroes, the black superheroes that have kind of taken on a mantle from one of the white superheroes, and then the original characters. I'm interested to go deeper and learn more about what's out there because I feel like there's a lot of stories that have been told that we're just not familiar with, and there's a depth of culture. And I mean, comics historically mirror a lot of what's happening in culture and in society, and there's a lot of stories that haven't been told far and wide that should be.
Well, you've come to the right place.
That's what we like to hear.
If the technology is working, if it's not working, I'm just going to read a lot. So bear with me. We're going to try this again. Take two. If the technology doesn't want to just completely screw me up here. Let's see. Go into presentation mode. And I rarely use PowerPoint. No, I rarely use PowerPoint. This is just like, this will be great. Okay, bring you down. Look at this. So far, it's working properly.
Huzzah.
Now let's just see if StreamYard's going to play nicely with it. Joy. Well, in theory, I should be sharing a window now.
There it is.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. This worked totally on the first time. You're very good at technology.
Well, thank you. I try. I make an effort. We'll make sure that hopefully this will. Yes, this will work perfectly. Okay, so as I was saying earlier, welcome to my TED Talk. Here we go. We're going to just jump right in. In 1976, this was an ad that was featured in many publications like Ebony, Jet, and other magazines and publications that were they were presented primarily for African American audiences. And really, the imagery, you would think, but he's being a superhero. What's so wrong with that? But what he's not seeing is a superhero that looks like him. And, we've around this time, publishers are starting to become a little more aware of that. And we're then trying to introduce characters that represented other cultures that were not entirely stereotypical, but, well, didn't always quite work out that way. But we can jump forward a bit jump backwards a bit to 1934. Lothar, who was one of the first Black characters featured prominently this was actually a newspaper comic strip in Mandrake the Magician. He was presented as companion to Mandrake. And he was, Prince of the Seven Nations. He was incredibly strong, invulnerable to weapons and magic. he was originally presented as not very intelligent, having limited vocabulary, at least of English. But in the 1980s, he was featured along with Mandrake, Flash Gordon, and the Phantom in a cartoon series called Defenders of the Earth, which some of you may remember, along with all of their children as the next generation of superheroes. And he was much more articulate than for some reason, fortunately. Jumping forward, so Brian had mentioned Will Eisner a little while ago, and Will Eisner had a character who's a sidekick to the Spirit called Ebony White, which was, a pun on being black and a character who was subordinate to a white character. It's very stereotypical, very racially motivated, and in the movie that came out in 2007. I believe, character was not there, fortunately.
I can't imagine that would have ever, flown.
Yeah.
It.
Instead, we got Shia LaBeouf, and I don't know if that was a push or not.
He's a
Just
real life
saying.
cannibal, is what I've heard. I'm sorry. I don't mean to joke. That's just, yeah.
Yeah, we'll let that one slide this time. In 1954, Atlas Comics, who's a precursor to Marvel, came out with Waku of the Bantu, who was a chieftain of a Bantu nation, and he was Marvel's first black feature star, predating the Black Panther by 12 years. But he was not. He did not have his own title. The comic was actually called Jungle Comics, because 50s, everybody. Now, the first African-American character to headline his own series was Lobo. It was from Dell Comics, a Western hero who wanted for a crime he didn't commit, which was a popular trope of the time. There were many TV shows that also kind of had this kind of theme in the 50s and 60s. But yeah, he was the first African-American character to headline his own series. And going to characters that some of
not to be confused with the Lobo of the 90s, right?
Very much not. Nor Sheriff Lobo from BJ and the Bear for people of a certain age. Jumping ahead another year, Black Panther. Now, originally, when Stan Lee and I can't remember who his co-conspirator was in this, I think it may have been actually Jack Kirby, came up with the character. They originally were going to call him Coal Tiger. Fortunately, that did not fly, and he appeared in Fantastic Four 52, and that he got his own title in 1977, and he's been seen, in comics, cartoons, his own feature film. Unfortunately, we lost Chadwick Boseman, so we did not get to see him in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. But his spirit lives on, as they say.
I have a question about Black Panther and his creation. Was there any connection with the political movement and his origin?
That actually caused some problem at first, because they were like, well, that was one of the reasons they wrote Coal Tiger, to kind of get away from that. But they were
Which
like,
is a dope name. How did it not fly?
I'm going to have to try and find you a copy of what he would have looked like. It would not have been.
Oh, okay.
It's a process.
But there was a lot of question about, is he affiliated with the Black Panther movement, and there was not any direct intent for that to happen. And in fact, I believe the character predates the party by like a number of months.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. Brian, you may have to validate that for me.
No. You're spot on. You're spot on. It's interesting because Reginald Hudlin, who would go on and do a run of Black Panther, he mentions that in a foreword specifically how much of a happy coincidence it was, and even to speak on the fact that when we're talking about different times, information travels differently. When the Black Panther movement was in full swing, so we had Black Panther, we established, but at one point, T'Challa is written in Fantastic Four very, very differently than how you would recognize him today. For a time, that he even went by a Black Leopard to indistinguish from the Black Panther. So,
but they stopped that and went back to Black Panther. And when he's originally introduced, it was Black Panther in the Fantastic Four issue. They did, as Brian was saying, go to Black Leopard, but they were just like, why are we doing this? And decided to just return to his original name. Pharaoh Lad. Now, as a fan of the Legion, this one was interesting to me to learn a while back that Pharaoh Lad in 1966 was originally supposed to be black. Jim Shooter, who's kind of a legend in comics, was writing the Legion at, I believe he was 14 or 15. He actually just submitted, he was a fan and submitted scripts and was just like, hey. And he created Pharaoh Lad, and he was going to have him be the first black character in the Legion. And Mort Weisinger, who was the editor of the Legion at the time, was like, no, because we'll lose our readership in the South if we do that. And they also were going to decided to kill Pharaoh Lad off a number of issues later. And that was actually Shooter's idea. He's like, if they're not going to let me do this, I'm just going to kill the character and make sure he stays dead. And it was one of the lasting deaths in comics. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your fandom of the Legion has gone through, at this point, 8 reboots or 8 different versions on the theme. And it is one of the most confusing histories of any comics outside of the Summers family and the X-Men. But if you look at the new Legion that was done by Brian Bendis in 2020, Pharaoh Lad was brought back as a black character. So, not too far. 1971. The first African-American superhero, Butterfly, by Skywalk Publications. 2 whole issues, and then just disappeared and was never heard from again. Do not have very much information on her outside of that. She was, I think, a Vegas lounge singer or lounge dancer, was a superhero by night, so to speak, and then after 2 issues, never heard from again. Also in 1971, my guy, John Stewart, was introduced in comics. He was originally going to be Hal Jordan's backup, and some of you may have heard me talk before about the origin of John Stewart, how the late Neil Adams went to editorial at DC and said, we need a new Green Lantern. Like, we've got Guy Gardner. And Neil Adams was kind of like, so let me get this straight. Something happens to Green Lantern, his ring flies off around the world, passes Superman, Batman, billions of other people, and winds up on the ring finger of a gym teacher from Michigan, passing everybody else up. So we need something to happen to him. We need to get him hit by a bus. And that's exactly what they did, laying Gardner out for months so that it could just be 1 issue and then back. And that's how John Stewart actually became Hal Jordan's backup. And then over time, he's been featured in the Justice League cartoon and Justice League Unlimited cartoon, where most people came to know him. And then also in the comics, has gone on to become leader of the Green Lantern Corps. And he's also going to be featured, as James Gunn mentioned a few weeks back, in the new Green Lanterns TV series coming up on HBO Max. Luke Cage came the following year for Marvel, and he was the first black hero featured as a protagonist and title character of his own comic. He's been seen in not just his own title, Fantastic Four, the Avengers, Heroes for Hire, different variations of Avengers titles, but also in the Netflix MCU adjacent series, Luke Cage and the Defenders, and I think he was in an episode of Jessica Jones. No, he was not. She was on his show. Sorry, I stand corrected. Misty Knight, go ahead.
Are some of these your own pictures of your own comics and action figures?
Maybe.
No, I love that. Um,
I was just assuming they all were like pictures of hero comics and action figures.
Yeah, if anyone hasn't seen his Instagram yet, Action Figures Theater, it is fantastic. He
Phenomenal.
posts
Phenomenal.
new pictures every single day, and it's one of the best parts of my morning when I
thank you.
open the gram.
Thank you very much. It's very kind.
I am usually an audio only podcast listener, but I do feel like this episode might be better with the visuals on YouTube. So just throwing that out there for you listeners.
Next up, we have Misty Knight in 1975, who preceded Storm of the X-Men by, I believe, 2 months as being introduced as a character. And she was as a background character originally, but she rose to prominence and through interactions with Luke Cage, Danny Rand, her partner Colleen Wing, and she formed Nightwing Investigations and then went on to head up Luke Cage and Danny Rand's former organization, Heroes for Hire. And she kind of works alongside now Sam Wilson, Captain America in the comics. And as I mentioned, Storm came, I think, 2 months after Misty. She was one of the first Black females to have a main or supporting role at either Marvel or DC. Tyrock. Now, as a Legion fan, I will cut a lot of latitude for many things. Tyrock is one of those things I just give a wide berth. The Legion was mighty white. They did have an orange guy, a green guy, and a dark blue girl. That's about it, out of 30-something characters. So they decided to create a Black character named Tyrock. One of the problems with Tyrock is, much like Kryptonians in the 50s, Tyrock came from an island of only Black people. And even worse, the island phased in and out of main continuity every so often. So it's just basically like, we're gone. We're not dealing with you. We're out. And they were out. His power set was similar to Black Canary's, but was also a little wider. He could also get different effects like flight, explosions, time distortion, energy distortion, by variations in how he screamed. If you look at is the Superboy and the Legion picture showing up fairly well for everybody? Or is it kind of tiny? Yeah. Okay. So he was his look was based on, I believe, Jim Brown of the NFL at the time. But they gave him the outfit like a really poorly cut Elvis costume, which is what they literally were going for, because they were like, the creator, who I think was Jim Shooter also, was just like, this is ridiculous. I am not going to do this. I'm sorry, it wasn't Jim Brown. It was Fred Williamson, also from the NFL. But if I've got to do this, this is what you're going to get. Tyrock was in and out of Legion stories over the years. And during one of the reboots, they finally came back and gave him a much better looking costume. Give him a little workup on his hair, whole 9 yards. Power set and everything stayed the same. But yeah, Tyrock.
So he went to the same superhero tailor that Nightwing went to originally for his
Pretty
original
much
costume.
with the collar, the whole 9 yards,
Yeah.
and the open chest. Yeah, it's great to know that tailor had business for 1,000 years.
Forward for a time. That was how we rocked it.
Yeah.
I think the gloves are bitching.
Well, you don't want to get fingerprints and everything.
That's true.
Next up, Bumblebee, who people may recognize from Teen Titans Go, or Young Justice. She appeared in 1976. She had a boyfriend, Mal Duncan, who was also he was Teen Titans adjacent originally, and then became a member after she dressed up. She made a bee outfit to antagonize the Titans and make her boyfriend look good. That's love. That's love right there.
Or bad storytelling. It's fine.
6 on one hand, half a dozen on the other. Cyborg appeared in 1980. He became a member of the New Teen Titans. In the 2011 New 52 reboot of the DC Universe, he became a member of the Justice League. And not many people remember that he was actually on the Super Friends cartoon late in its run, but it was called Superpowers Team Galactic Guardians. He's also been seen in Teen Titans Go, Young Justice, and in the Justice League movie, both the Zack Snyder and the Joss Whedon versions. Take your pick. Okay, Amazing Man. Now, this one is an interesting one because he appeared in 1983, but the Justice Society comic book was still being written as it was supposed to be occurring in the 40s. And they basically made this character retroactive and put him in the Justice Society. Or actually, it was the All-Star Squadron and then the Justice Society. But his power is kind of like Absorbing Man, where anything he touches, he takes on the properties of that element or that thing. So if he touches rock, he becomes like organic stone. Touches metal, becomes organic metal, kind of like Colossus of the X-Men. But that was later changed, and he gained magnetic powers and lost his mimicking ability. He also has two legacy characters, two grandsons who wound up getting the same ability. One of whom died, and one of whom just hasn't been seen in comics for years.
He's just out there touching stuff and
just out there touching stuff, just like
yeah, getting those powers. Yeah, just living his life, his best
just
life.
living his life.
Yeah.
Static, from 1993, Milestone Comics, which was a comic company that was like, there's a complete lack of characters of color in comics these days. So basically 7 creators got together to form Milestone Media. Static is one of the characters that came out of this, created by Dennis Collin and was he Dwayne McDuffie or was he another creator?
Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Collin.
It was McDuffie. Okay.
And early on, you had Christopher Priest.
Yes.
Who was present, but unfortunately would end up leaving.
Under the circumstances of that were not great, unfortunately. If you get a chance, and this would be a great point to put this out there, if you get a chance to look up Milestone Media, please do. They were their own house, but they had a great deal with DC to be published by DC without being attached to DC directly. Later, and part of the thing that broke up some of the creators from Milestone, or made them leave the company, was them folding into DC for more with the characters joining. I think they called it Earth M at the time, and then being folded into the mainstream universe and then back out again. There's currently been a resurgence of the Milestone titles that you can find at your local comic shop with Static, Hardware, an Icon, Blood Syndicate, and a rework of the title Zombie from the original series as a title called Duo now. But I would definitely say check them out and look at their history, and they're a fantastic company to just kind of learn about.
Me and my kiddo. Yeah,
go ahead,
well, I was going to say, me and my kiddo during the pandemic got into the Static Shock series on Disney Plus and had a lot of fun with that.
HBO Max.
Oh, no. Was it on?
Yeah.
Definitely HBO Max.
Okay. I thought I only watched Game of Thrones on that, but
they don't do a lot of DC titles on Disney Plus.
No, not quite.
All right, that makes sense.
This was one of my favorite cartoons to watch as a kid.
It was really well done, and they did a good job of adapting it from the source material, but making it age appropriate for a younger audience as well. But they did not. One of the other great things about it was they didn't shy away from touching on social issues, or to some degree a little bit socio-political and economic issues, but also kind of age appropriate and in a way that could open up conversation.
And another aspect of Milestone Static that folds into black superheroes that you should know about. Dwayne McDuffie specifically works at different levels. So when you look at your Justice League Unlimited, when you look at your so from Justice League Unlimited, right to static Justice League Unlimited, static Justice League Unlimited, and then going into Justice League, the comic, Dwayne McDuffie was there for all of it at certain phases, and so I'm thinking about Jake, what you were saying as far as wanting to kind of go past your different categories. So Robert already mentioned Hardware, Icon, and Rocket. The Dakota universe, Dakota verse is kind of what makes is kind of like the core of Milestone. And you have so many aspects that are kind of already baked into some very prominent aspects of DC. If I'm not mistaken, you have Icon showing up in Young Justice League. You have Hardware showing up. Was it? I want to say was Brave and the Bold. Was it Hardware and Blue Beetle? I'm not
It was
sure.
Hardware, but I know that Hardware did show up as a background character in a couple of seasons of Young Justice.
So we have these instances, these examples of just, Static is definitely kind of the the front man. Static is the face, but then you have these other connecting aspects of this universe that is, I implore you. Matter of fact, HBO Max, there is a documentary. There's a documentary that covers Milestone and its creation and how it thrived and how it sort of contributed and redefined certain aspects of comics.
Yeah, definitely check that out.
Yeah, that I took note of Milestone and the characters, Hardware, Icon that you guys mentioned. I think
And Icon, just
sounds
to
interesting.
kind of give you a little lead on Icon, Icon is very similar to the Superman model. Alien crash lands on Earth. The difference is this alien is an older alien who regresses. He lands on Earth in the 1800s, which is not a great time. And basically, where Superman landed in Kansas, this alien lands in on a plantation, and it imprints on the first people that touch him and takes on characteristics of them. So he becomes a black man in the 1800s, which is not a great time. There's the history actually is his history is recounted in season 1 of Icon and Rocket, which was released last year, and I think partially in 2021. 6 issues, really good storytelling. I recommend that as a story as well. Hardware is kind of an Iron Man-esque story. Brilliant inventor whose work is manipulated and capitalized upon by a older businessman, similar to what we saw in the Iron Man movie, the first one with Obadiah Stane. But then the owner of the company villainizes this guy, and this is the fight for him to regain not just his identity and life back, but to save the people around him and his city. And Brian mentioned how there's a lot of interconnectedness of the Dakota universe. The way that the heroes in the Dakotaverse outside of Icon all come together is out of one event for the most part. And either somebody was responsible for it, somebody was affected by it, or somebody, had something on the fringes to do with it. And they all kind of come together in that universe in that way. It's tight knit in that way, but the stories themselves branch off in so many different directions and genres that you get a wonderful variety.
Icon's story kind of reminds me, at least from what you said, kind of Octavia Butler's Kindred, of like being implanted in that scenario. And then, which they just made TV show of and canceled after first season, which is a shame. because the book and story itself is amazing.
I may have to check that out. Thank you for the
Is it a
recommendation.
Netflix series? Is that why they
No,
canceled it?
I think it's on Paramount.
Hulu.
Hulu. Yeah.
Hmm.
And yeah, she's one of the first female sci-fi writers, like of all, one of the big ones. She's lovely.
Steele. Two people share this name, and you may have seen Steele. He's appeared in Superman the Animated Series. Sorry, John Henry Irons has appeared in Superman the Animated Series. Also appears in Young Justice. Both he and his niece in the comics, daughter on the show, appear on Superman and Lois on the CW. But he's a kind of the mantle bearer, like Jake was mentioning earlier.
You're not going to mention his feature film starring Shaq?
Never happened.
Oh, okay.
Oh no.
Hey, there's a lot that we can get into about that.
No, Jake, I'm not. I'm going to, in fact,
fair.
just ignore
That's
you even
fair.
said anything about it. But during the death of Superman in the 90s, Steele was one of 4 characters who was part of the Return of the Supermen saga, and he was a character who'd been saved by Superman years before, and with the lack of Superman in Metropolis, he built a suit of armor and a giant hammer to fight crime, and did. And then later, his niece, when he became injured, built her own armor and took up the mantle, joined the Titans, joined a couple of other teams as well, and also fight crime. And now they both run an engineering think tank in Metropolis that supports new technologies and new innovations to help the average person in the DC universe.
I'm so
did
glad.
Natasha? Or sorry, go ahead, Jake.
I said I'm just so glad. I remember the reign of the Supermen and the 4 different Supermans that showed up, and I'm just really glad that Steel has endured as long as, I mean, because the other ones are gone basically. They've popped up here and there.
Actually, the Cyborg Superman has shown up more in the Supergirl series of late.
Yeah,
The Eradicator has kind of
I know the
fallen
Eradicator
off,
came back a couple years ago in some storyline,
but he
but
wasn't
Steel has
very
kind of
much
become his
again.
own character, right? And he's really kind of stuck around for a long time, and I'm glad
He
to see
has.
that, 'cause I liked his character from the beginning. I thought his was really intriguing and one of my favorite parts of that storyline.
Well, like you said, the movie, right? I feel like still more than any of the characters or the other Superman from Reign of the Superman, just I mean catapulted.
Mhm.
Then, like, I mean, we understand how superhero media functions now, but I mean, then to be to come off the page, be featured in the film, featured in the video game, all in the span, and then the animated series, all in the span of the 90s is pretty
Mhm.
insane to think about. So I can
True,
definitely relate.
especially with when the media didn't turn over that often, or wasn't that interconnected in
Mhm,
that way.
mhm.
Unlike today, where it's just like page print or page and screen, and any other media you can think of, web series, etc. And yeah, it's you're right. He has endured well, and it's nice to see that they are moving him forward into the 21st century, and giving him, while he's still a supporting character in the Superman titles, it's prominent, kind of like replacing Star Labs in a lot of ways for a lot of the things
Mhm.
that Superman needs support on.
Mhm.
Thunder and Lightning, Daughters of Black Lightning. They've appeared in various cartoons, TV shows, most prominently Black Lightning. Um, they first appeared in 2003 for Anissa Thunder, and 2008 Jennifer Lightning. And she was trying to think. Lightning was part of the Justice Society to help her train to use her powers, because they were at that time looking at the Justice Society much in the same way as Marvel used uh, the Xavier Institute, and to a lesser degree, the Initiative, to train superheroes to actually go out and to learn how to use their powers.
But just to be clear, thunder came before lightning. Because that seems accurate.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Jake. The Blue Marvel, man caught wrong place, wrong time, good result. Wound up became basically a stable antimatter energy generator, fly, project energy, similar, Superman-esque in many ways. Number of different different Avengers teams, including the Avengers, the Mighty Avengers, the Ultimates. But one of the neat things about this character and the way he was written is that he had been a hero in the 60s, but he had a full body and full face covering suit. And during one of his battles, it got damaged, and people were like able to see that there was a black man under this suit. And they wrote into his story that he was asked by President Kennedy to retire because the country at that time was not ready for a black superhuman. There's a similar story that John Ridley wrote called The American Way that came out, I believe, a couple of years before this, that had a character called the New American, who was a legacy character in that universe, but was also the second character was black, got into a battle. His uniform got damaged. He was asked to retire as well. Kind of went underground and became a little more radicalized than the Blue Marvel did, causing riotous actions within that universe. It's actually a really interesting story. There are 2 miniseries. I believe they're both 8-issue miniseries. I don't remember who was the publisher for that, but it was John Ridley, The American Way. Check for it at your local comic book shop. Brian, do you have anything on either Blue Marvel or The American Way?
I want to. I'm enjoying the presentation. Blue Marvel and American Way. I can side rail, especially on Blue Marvel. Just there's so much. I mean, the character is coming back around in recent focuses. There's been a lot of buzz around the character in so many. From different outlets, media outlets. John Ridley has been, so I can, you covered it.
One of the, I'll mention that 2 years ago when WandaVision came out, they kept teasing that somebody knew a physicist. I kept hoping they were actually going to not do Reed Richards, because everybody's like, oh man, they're going to introduce the Fantastic Four here. And I was like, no, the best link that they have there would have been to bring in Adam Brashear, because not only is he a physicist, but he is dating Monica Rambeau, who we are going to see again this year in the Marvels with Brie Larson and Teyonah Parris and Iman Vellani. So I was just really hoping they'd bring him in, and they let me down.
Oh,
thanks, Marvel. Thanks, Kevin Feige.
He's just a robot these days.
This.
Now, this one's a little more obscure, and this was actually a lot more obscure, unless you're local.
Yeah, no, this is good.
The Golden Spike. So, Velady Studios introduced the Golden Spike and the Salt City Strangers in 2016. They are the not premier super team of Salt Lake City. They are the underdog super team. They're in the shadow of the Faithful Four.
I'm shocked there's 2 superhero troops in Salt Lake City.
Well,
you picked up the first issue. I've seen you. You picked up the first issue of the hero
But it's
who
just,
headlines one.
Just Siegel. I didn't know he was part of a group of people.
He is part of a group.
I wouldn't want to be friends with him. That was mean. It's just an odd superhero.
No, that is totally the thing with the Gull. The guys who run Velady are friends of mine, so I definitely wanted to give them a little bit of a shout here. But the Golden Spike he carries the blessed handguns of Porter Rockwell, as well as the actual somehow empowered Golden Spike. Return to
Well, that checks out.
missionaries. Pardon me?
That sounds right. No, that checks out. I think that's all accurate, historically
Yeah,
speaking.
this is in the Book of Mormon, right?
Oh my goodness.
I will not make any claim there.
Yeah. Smart, Robert.
Every once in a while, but the Salt City Strangers is your kind of Doom Patrol-esque superhero team. They're not the bright, shiny super team. They're the guys who are down in the muck, down in the, just getting what they can do to try to make things better, not always doing it as efficiently, as effectively as possible, but they're doing their best. They try hard. They mean well.
Can you just imagine the Doom Patrol version of Utah superheroes? Like, they drink coffee and forgot to wear a tie on Sunday. Like, they're the baddies.
If you have a chance, an opportunity to check out Salt City Strangers, please do. I know that issues are available at local comic shops in Salt Lake City. Check it out. If you have questions about it, let me know, and I can put you in touch with the Validity guys as well.
Robert,
I think there's a question.
Yes.
Question. Is there any validity? Can you tell me a little bit about the Golden Spike and Gary Coleman? Is there Golden Spike? I know in the imagery and iconography associated with the railroad. I think I remember reading something about Gary Coleman being inspired and into the railroad and trains and just a fan. Is there any? And I think Gary Coleman spent some time in Utah. I'm not sure, but have you heard anything like this?
I have not, but I'm asking now.
Well,
We're going straight to the source.
I'm going straight to the source. I'm cutting the middleman, going straight to the source.
Is there any connection to this guy and the legend Patrick Henry?
I do not know the legend of Patrick Henry.
Isn't it Patrick Henry, the railroad guy who
John Henry?
There we go.
Patrick Henry was Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, yeah.
Slightly different.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. John Henry.
And for those keeping track at home, John Henry, this is the second time his name has come up in the conversation tonight. Steel is tied to
Steel is,
okay,
and there's also the title of the series is Stargirl and the Lost Children, which is a current series from Jeff Johns at DC, is introducing unknown teenage sidekicks. I'm sorry, time lost teenage sidekicks to Golden Age superheroes. One of whom is John Henry Jr., who was apparently supposed to be the sidekick to John Henry, who was seen in Darwin Cook's New Frontier.
Oh.
But along with other teenage sidekicks as well. But John Henry Jr. was one of the characters that they're reintroducing. Okay. Next up, because we're just about done here, Naomi McDuffie. Naomi McDuffie is a newish character, created by Brian Bendis, David F. Walker, and Jamal Igle. She is from a similar Superman story, from a ravaged Earth, raised on this Earth, but doesn't discover her powers and her origin until she's in her teens. She winds up joining the Justice League. Winds up joining Young Justice first, then is recruited to the Justice League after like 2 fights. We're just like, nope, you're coming with us. And she actually kind of scares doesn't scare Batman. She concerns Batman being this powerful at such a young age.
Batman.
Huh?
That's true.
Everybody concerns Batman.
Touche.
I feel like Batman, he meets somebody and he's already working on a contingency plan of how to take them
out. She had a short-lived series on the CW, Naomi, but she has a continuing. Her stories are usually 6-issue miniseries from DC formerly under their Wonder Comics line. But she's a fun character. They've written her very well. I've actually been impressed with how well they capture teenage everything with superpowers heaped on top of it. And then finding out, look, you're in the Justice League now, and dealing with that putting her in that headspace. Fun character, and it's not very difficult to find issues with her of her comic. And again, you can find like on the CW or CW Seed, her series, which was canceled after one season, but was not exactly the same as the comic, but kept all of the beats of the comic in the series. And it was also, if I remember correctly, directed by Ava DuVernay.
Oh, that's Wrinkle in Time.
Yes.
I mean, amongst other, but
Yes.
yeah.
Because I'm a Green Lantern guy, you get another Green Lantern. A newer one, Jo Mullein. She was basically a New York cop who was a whistleblower against some police brutality, which got her blackballed. Then a friend's social media report about something she was doing got her fired. And she was, much like Kyle Rayner, approached by a Guardian to have an interview for a new job, or to try out a new job. This job was actually being stuck on the outside of Owen protected space in a region called the Far Sector. And she had 1 year to bring law to that area and to solve the first murder that they'd had in over 500 years. And with no contact from any other lanterns, any of the Guardians, just on her own. She finished that assignment, came back to known space just in time for the central battery to blow up, and her to be one of the few lanterns with a ring that worked. Actually, I believe she was the only lantern at the time with a ring that worked. Her story was written by N.K. Jemisin, science fiction writer, and it was an interesting socioeconomic and political look of a alien culture, and Jo is kind of a fish out of water in many ways, and just trying to make her way, and then watch her come back to the core and have to take on something of a leadership role with people who are like, and you are, and why do you have a ring that still works when none of ours do? That integration was actually handled really well.
She looks awesome, but that belt is doing nothing.
It's there for fashion.
I guess that's something.
Style.
Okay,
Style.
okay.
One of the things, and I'm not sure, I haven't been able to confirm this or not yet, but I believe that her look was actually loosely based on Janelle Monáe.
I love Janelle Monáe.
Jo's got an interesting story. Take a look, check her out as well. And that, as they say, brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you for coming along.
Amen. And we can be done. I'm just kidding. There's some more Utah humor for you.
No, and there were a ton of other characters. I mean, I kind of wanted to cover people that some people that people were aware of, some that people were not aware of. I wanted to go into the history of a few things. There are still tons of characters that are out there that I may have either brushed on or just haven't even covered. I will say that if you check out, where is it? Nope, it's over here. There it is. My Instagram. This month I'm doing Black History Month using action figures, very many of whom out of comics, some out of pop culture, but I also cover some obscure ones in there as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. Is there anyone else that we want to bring up? I know that we also, we all did a little bit of research on it.
Yes.
Well, I guess I'll speak for myself. I did a little bit of research on it. I don't know about these schmoes, who I love. But we also had talked a little bit about wanting to touch on the whole. You can't even I was Googling something. But black superheroes and the how a lot of them have gotten electric powers, and that trope that has gone into comics. Not, I was gonna say lately, but it's not a lately thing.
It's not a lately thing.
It's a thing.
Because what black superhero doesn't want to have electric powers?
I think the funniest thing is it's sort of become a situation where you don't know, or you have to question whether or not you are laughing with someone or being laughed at. And I say that just because it's friends we're talking about, some friends of mine, where we're just goofing off talking about comics, and incidentally, I think the question just becomes like, wait a minute, does Miles count?
Oh yeah.
Well, it's I don't know. I have to think about it. And then my biggest conundrum right now, and the one that really throws me for a loop is the Storm count.
Oh yeah.
Well, the Storm, even if Storm does count, the Storm count as the first, and then everything else is kind of derivative after her.
I think you have to count Storm because of the line in the first X-Men movie.
Oh, stop it! Stop
No,
it! Stop
no,
it! Stop it! Stop it!
I'm even gonna not. I know I went to steal the movie, but we are not gonna talk about that line because it is the worst line in cinema. Period.
So yeah, I think you got to count Storm. If you know,
Here's
you
the thing.
know.
Here's my riddle. Here's my riddle. If Storm is in fact able to affect weather, then we can throw heat, cold into her abilities. It's just that she's always depicted in the famous hurling bolts or the hurricane. So
I don't know. On the cartoon, it was always a windstorm or snow.
that's a good point. That's a good point.
Because I mean, she was apparently just the only weather I got is wind. Okay, sure, Storm. I think they actually gave her more range on X-Men Evolution than they did in the X-Men cartoon.
Yeah, but the X-Men cartoon, although near and dear to my heart, underpowered a lot of the characters.
Yes.
I feel like. So.
Yes, that's fair.
But I hadn't thought. It's funny because Steph brought up the electric powers thing, and I didn't even think about Miles until you mentioned it, Brian. But yeah, like that. What did they add to him on top of Peter Parker's powers? He can turn invisible, and he can because apparently there are spiders out there that electrocute people. Is that a thing that spiders have?
Well, I mean, Jessica Drew has a venom blast as well. And I think that hers is, I think they've depicted it as electrical based, even though Jessica's not black. But I mean, to differentiate her from Peter.
Yeah.
I mean,
Remember when you
Silk
play the
doesn't
Miles
have
Morales?
it. No, Silk doesn't have it. I'm trying to think if there's any other. Ben Reilly doesn't have it. Kane may.
I don't remember if Kane does or not. But it's just in the Miles Morales video game, even like it's a central part of a lot of the missions and tasks that you have to complete, and the way you battle people. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the origin of that? Like, how has it come to that point? Like,
they bless the rains down in Africa. I don't know.
Okay.
Or it tends to be one of those happy creative incidences that tends to sort of permeate the creative space.
Okay.
we think we're being original in one area, and oh look, right across the way in another creative space, we have a hero you've never seen before.
Yeah.
Is he black?
Well, actually, even going back to even with Static, in the Static Shock cartoon, there's an episode where he dealt with a couple of older heroes, like more than one, that were electrically based heroes as well. Soul Power for one, and I cannot remember the other guy's name.
Maybe there is. Maybe okay. Maybe there is precedent. We do know that Black Lightning was supposed to be featured on the Justice Friends. Or excuse me, Justice Friends.
Super Friends.
Super Friends. On Super Friends. Hanna-Barbera was supposed to feature Black Lightning. What ended up happening was a situation with copyright. So instead we got Black Vulcan. So we already have this derivative. The creator of Black Lightning, Tony Isabella, wasn't thrilled. And actually the way Black Lightning, the first series, ends, it sort of ends in a very sort of, he got the last laugh because he introduces another character, and he I forget the character's name off the top of my head, but it's basically a parody of the whole process of, you know, a licensed character versus an unlicensed character. So maybe there is, you know, a precedence as far as, you know, photocopy Matt to sort of you know, be electrical powers based specifically.
The cyborg count?
No.
He's powered by
I
electricity.
think he does.
I don't think Cyborg counts, Vic. He doesn't
I
count.
think he doesn't. He's powered by electricity, but he doesn't have like electric powers.
I feel like Teen Titans Cyborg does, because he's always
doesn't he like blast out like
Which
Like
Teen Titans
sonic
are we
waves.
talking about?
He has
Like,
different
Teen Titans
electrical
Go.
waves or something?
Teen Titans Go is not canon.
Miles
at
has
all.
different
I don't think
abilities.
they
What's your point?
take,
Teen
Miles,
Titans Go
Miles
is
can stick the
golden.
walls and he can shock people. Vic is a walking power plant. It can shock people too with whatever weapon he puts up there, and he's always running out of power. Vic needs to get a sponsorship from Energizer. That's what it is.
I haven't. Yeah.
It's a lot of battery
us for
replacements.
It's a
ideas.
lot. Yeah. I mean, I would go Tesla, but no. Just no. You know, something else I didn't cover in this that I wanted to talk about was Val Zod, the Black Superman from Earth 2. I mentioned when I was talking about Tyrock that, like Kryptonians in the 50s, he came from an island of just black people off on their own. DC had a horrible problem with this in the 50s because if you look at an atlas of Krypton, it show you, Kryptonopolis, Kandor, all these other cities, the lava falls, the crystal volcanoes, blah, 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 blah. Valtho Island. And Valtho Island was where the super intelligent black race of Krypton stayed, as they put it on the map. And that's where they were all from. And you never saw any other black Kryptonians really until probably the early 2000s, when they regrouped Kandor, and they had different Kryptonians from different guilds, different races, and everything who had survived in Kandor. But yeah, DC had a problem with just shuffling off black people to their own island and just leaving them there. There was an update.
in the 50s, that wasn't a DC problem. That was kind of, an American.
Well, I mean, the fact that they said highly intelligent black race, and it's just like,
yeah,
thanks, DC. I mean, thanks for making them smart, but bad move.
Yeah.
Bad form.
But we see there's no denying a pattern. Everything from Ebony White to a Kryptonian island of super black.
Well, to be fair, and to be historically fair, comics, and this is one of the things a lot of people in the modern era are going, well, why am I getting this new character who's a legacy of this character, who's carrying the mantle of this, who's not that character? Is that comics, for the most part, with the exception of like the creators that we talked about, the Invisible Men, who were there but not there, were all white, and they had, their perception was these people exist, which is why you got characters like Ebony White, which is why you got characters like I think the original version of the Turtle, where you got characters even as late as the 60s. I'm sorry, 1959, when DC did their first jump from like the Justice Society age heroes to the science-based heroes, with Green Lantern's mechanic, Tom Kamalku, who they called for the longest time Pieface. And they're like, that was their version of inclusion was they're there, but their depictions were not the most favorable. And that actually carried on well into the 90s, when they were still calling Tom Pieface, when they were DC did a series called The New Guardians, where the Guardians of the Guardians of O were basically like, we're out, we're making you guys the new Guardians. And one of them was a character from South America, whose superhero name was Estrangio. And he was gay. And that was also the point where you couldn't really have a gay character, but all of the way he was written, the way he dressed, his flourishes were just completely coded that. So as late as that was 90, that was millenniums, that would have been late 80s, early 90s. They had a problem. It's nice to see that they're actually getting diversity, actual diversity with actual writers, of color, of different orientations in comics now, because it's been long overdue.
Absolutely. And just to kind of take that on, let's continue that into the momentum of just this month. There has been so much going on, so much that has been having to do with introducing new characters in Black History Month that have to do with the legacy and introducing new characters. And so I'll give you two. Just this month, we are introduced to Bloodline, who is the daughter of Blade. So that's that's just happening, and then also more of legacy in the sense of the actual. We would talk about publications and what we can look back to as far as some of the storytellings that happened. Then this is Silver Surfer Volume 1. I'm really excited about this story. Silver Surfer Volume 1, issue, I want to say issue 5. I'm going to say issue between either issue 4 or issue 5, had to do with the story called, don't take me, okay. I'm not specific on the story title, but I'll go ahead and go into the character. Marvel introduced Silver Surfer Ghostlight. Now, Ghostlight is a character. Robert, are you familiar with this?
I am not.
Who Shall Mourn You? Who Shall Mourn You was a story that happened in the original Silver Surfer back in Volume 1, I want to say mid to late 60s, that had to do with a physicist. He's a doctor, and he actually dies that issue. And this story, this Ghostlight, has to do with his resurrection or his being or introduction into the Marvel Universe now. So we're reaching back, and I admittingly, unfortunately, I haven't had time to jump into this story that I'm really looking forward to. But it was distinctively researched, and the writer John Jennings has an amazing, eloquent tone in what led him to research and pick these characters to kind of reform and make relevant story for today. So,
sorry, just jump in really quick. Silver Surfer number 5, 1969.
1969. Okay. Who Shall Mourn You? Is that right?
Go computer, go. And Who Shall and who shall mourn for him? But I'll
Who
give it to you
shall
because I was more than I would have gotten.
Okay. Okay.
Well, and two, on top of what Brian was saying, not in comics, but they just released Moon Girl
And Devil
and
Dinosaur.
Devil Dinosaur on Disney Plus, which is so fun.
I watched it with my daughters today.
It's just
Well done.
yeah. So bringing in some of those characters that like who in the world knew I didn't know who Moon Girl was, but and then bringing in the vibrancy of her setting just adds to that story as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Collin, you've been mighty quiet. I'm a little worried over there. You okay?
I'm just taking things in, man. I mean, I just love hearing about all these characters that I just haven't explored before, right? And so like your presentation's phenomenal, and hopefully you can send me the slides and I can pop them up on the website too to put on with this. But
gladly.
I just love this so much, and I've been taking notes as we've been going too, so I can list out all the characters and stuff. But
and I hope that things continue to keep getting better. I know I've had talks with like Brian about this and just how sometimes it can get disheartening when you start adding in new characters and different. I mean, I compare it to like sometimes Miss Marvel, where like the movie, like not that there's criticisms for sure, but was it bad or was there just so much hate towards it? Is that why it did it? So it's just you want to continue
Marvel,
to see
or Captain Marvel the movie or Miss Marvel the series, because that description goes for either
Captain Marvel. Well, yeah, I was thinking Captain Marvel
properties.
the movie. Where it's just you want to keep seeing it, you want to keep seeing it being done well, and then instead we get regurgitated stories of the same 5 characters, which isn't bad, but you want to see.
No, it is bad. No, it is bad. I mean, how many times do you need to reboot Spider-Man or Batman or Superman?
Well, and I can't believe they keep doing Peter Parker's story when like Into the Spider-Verse was so well received. It was so.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to get Across the Spider-Verse later this year. So, I mean, we know that there is an audience for it. We know that people want it. I really would love for Marvel to do a Miles. Actually, not only Miles. I'd love to see Miles or any of the other characters, but since that's all Sony property, I'm worried about what we're going to get. Or Sony license now, since Marvel handed the licenses over to Sony and Disney does not have enough money to get those back.
How is that possible?
Because
you would think,
keep asking for more.
And the way that they wrote the contract, Sony will not give those up anytime soon.
Like the fact that we've got Peter Parker in the MCU at all is pretty amazing.
True.
So
I'm just waiting for them to do Uncle Ben, his origin story.
You see, you know what? The only thing I want is for Peter to go shopping, pick up a thing of rice and just drop it. And that's all I want. That would be enough of an Uncle Ben origin for me.
I like Into the Spider-Verse. That's probably my favorite Spider-Man movie, and I'm looking forward to Across the Spider-Verse coming out later this year. But when we talk about regurgitating the same 5 stories over and over again, and I agree with you, Robert, that is bad. And I think that the way we can break away from that is by bringing in some of these characters that have a different story to tell. The problem is how gutsy is DC, how gutsy is Marvel to do it, because every time, like you said, Steph, every time they try to bring in some form of diversity into a story, we have to hear about it on the interwebs. And I'm not convinced it's a majority of the fans out there. I'm convinced it is a small group of fans who are very loud.
I would like to think that.
I know, Robert.
But
it's easy for me to think
say our perspectives are different.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you 100%.
But if they want to do a different take on the Spider-Man story, do Silk, bitten by the same spider, so you can actually have Peter as a background character, and the spider drops off Peter and goes, I'm not done yet, bites Cindy, and then go off in that direction because it's a story that not a lot of people are going to know. She didn't appear in the last Spider-Verse movie. I'm not sure if she's in this one or not. But I know that there's is it Amazon series or Sony series? They've talked about doing a Silk series, but that's a great way to get, it's a different spider, and it's a different spider story than without going to Miles. Go to Miles if I would love to see that as well. But I mean, Miles has what, 2 video games now?
One video game, and
One
he's
on the
going to
way,
be
or
one on the way. That's going to be
Okay.
both of them. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, Miles is at this point a fairly known quantity. If you want to stick with spiders, find a different direction, or talk to Sony, throw them a bucket of money, tell them you'll help them make a bigger bucket of money, and there's so many people who've been bitten by spiders apparently, or have been cloned from people bitten by spiders. The options are out there.
And I think it's just important to more than anything, just keep hammering it home. Take the risk, feature the characters, and just, you know what I mean, maintain that conviction more so than anything else.
Yes.
Because if it becomes, if we're able to understand that it is there, it is visible, and this is kind of like let's say the same energy that Marvel Studios had with building up to the Avengers, right? Like, this is the plan, we're sticking to it for better or worse, and we're going to see it through, and hopefully we're going to hope for the best, bad for the worst. But yeah, I would really appreciate publishers, studios to just sort of just put themselves out there beyond what is comfortable, what is.
But that's risky. That risks actual, like, real dollars if we do that. But you also have an audience looking for it.
The main characters of Guardians of the Galaxy are a raccoon and a tree person. Like, come on now. Let's be better.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with the new Captain America movie, the New World Order. And
I am
what
cautiously
happens.
optimistic.
Yeah.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier for me was great because it took Sam out of the background, put him forward. It brought Bucky forward, and then you got a buddy cop movie with 2 cops who don't like each other, and both of them learning about each other. I loved the fact that they introduced Isaiah Bradley and Eli Bradley in this. For people who don't know, Isaiah Bradley, if he was, as they mentioned in the series, one of the effectively guinea pigs that the Army was trying to test out variations of the super soldier serum on to try and recreate Captain America. Bradley was the only person on whom it worked without horrible side effects, like horrific side effects. There's a graphic novel called The Truth by Kyle Baker, and I don't remember who else was co on that, but
Robert Morales.
Thank you. Thank you. Robert Morales. Fantastic story. And it also kind of touches on some of the experiments that were done in real life on actual military and college students in the 50s and 60s, minus super soldier serum. But the parallels are there. So you can kind of see what was done in this country to citizens of this country by the government. But The Truth kind of moves it aside a little bit for the superhero genre. But they also kind of go on what happened to some of those people that it didn't work so well on. So if you can find that, please do read that.
I think that kind of goes back to, I can't remember, I think it was Brian, maybe when you were gone, talking about when knowing a little bit more about the context and what was going on in the world. And yeah, I think you probably touched about this. It just brings a lot more like light to why things are being written. And I think we'd like to think that our world is sunshine and butterflies, but knowing that there's dark history that goes into these books, and that goes for all the books. I mean, why was Captain America created in the first place? To fight Nazis. Like, there's a lot of depth that we don't necessarily think about when we just touch on the surface levels of these books and these character stories.
It's okay for art to make you feel uncomfortable and make you think about stuff. It's probably
We don't
preferred.
like it. We don't like it, Jake.
No. It's just,
The Dakota verse will make you feel uncomfortable. I will tell you that right off the bat. The Dakota verse, there are aspects of it that are very real life adjacent that are scary to a lot of people. And I think that that's a good thing.
Well, and that's Watchmen came out. The TV show came out a few years ago, and I am amongst the people, and I'm shocked. It's one of the first times people heard about the Tulsa massacre.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, knowing that these things are real and that these things happen, it makes you think about your worldview, adds depth to these characters.
I'm still hoping. I thought Sister Knight would have made her comics debut at this point already.
Damn, she's cool.
And so I'm still holding out hope. But going back to Truth and Captain America: New World Order, Robert, I don't know. You were making a point about why you were cautiously optimistic. I was just curious.
Sorry, yeah, I was cautiously optimistic because Marvel, in going the route of what's going to happen with Captain America if anything happens to Steve, and there are a lot of people like, is Bucky going to get the shield? Is Sam going to get the shield? The comics fans are like, who's going to get it? Because there's been times where both of them have had it. And Marvel has gone out on the limb to not only show Sam getting the shield, rejecting the shield, and then realizing there's a reason that Steve chose him and trusted him with the shield, because we got John Walker, which was not good for anybody having the shield. So Marvel's gone out on that limb, and they did something in episode 6 of the series when he finally shows up in his Captain America outfit, and he's taking on the Flag Smashers. And somebody asks him about it. He's like, I'm a black man. And just the fact that he started his conversation with them was like, okay, please continue. And he's like, I got the eyes of the world on me every time I do anything. And all I can do is just, be the best Captain America I can. I'm like, yes, that's fantastic. And the fact that whomever wrote that speech for Sam put that speech in there, and all of the levels of editorial that I had to get through for him to be able to make that speech and for it to make it out of production, into production, and not on the cutting room floor. Marvel has put themselves out there. I know that there are a lot of people who are like, not my Captain America. Okay, that's great. Go do something else. This isn't for you, apparently. I'm curious to see how they treat Sam in New World Order, because in the comics, when Sam became Captain America, they did not pull the punch about the American public not accepting him as Captain America. And Sam's like, I don't care if you accept me or not. I got the shield. I got the stripes. Deal with it. And moved on. He relinquished the shield to Steve later, but there's currently a series, and I'm going to screw up the title because there's 2 concurrent Captain America series now, Sentinel of Truth and Symbol of Liberty, and I cannot remember which one is the Sam title. But they started the books with the 2 of them acting together as Captains America. And then they're off on different tangents now. But they are, Sam is Captain America again in the Marvel comic universe. So I'm hoping that they show his struggle with people, accepting him as Captain America, and they'll just gloss over that, not just have everybody be like, oh, happy to see you, Captain America, because that's not what's really would happen in the real world.
So is the Sam and Bucky storyline original content away from the comics?
Yes. Because when Steve died for a while, or was thought dead for a while in the comics, Bucky was Captain America. Uh,
And he was not super great as Captain America.
he was
He was,
not great,
he was
and he had to pay for a
There's
lot
a
of things
lot of
because he was.
PTSD.
yeah.
It was interesting reading what he did as Captain America, but he was not great at being Captain America.
Yeah.
Um, and then Steve came back, and then Steve got old and turned his shield over to Sam. And that series, I think, ran for roughly 2 years, 2.5 years, before they reverted back to Steve being okay enough to carry the shield. Which is why I was happy to see that they brought Sam back as Captain America recently, because I think that his series is only 6 or 7 issues old at this point. But the content otherwise, yes, that was new.
So it's interesting when you talk about what they did with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And I had similar thoughts. Like I was surprised that they went where they went, because Disney does not, that the MCU has not hit on a lot of those points up to this. But it's one thing to do that on a streaming series on your streaming platform, and another thing to do it on a big summer blockbuster movie that you're expecting a lot of people to go to. That's where I hope, Brian, I'm with you. I hope that they stick with it and they say we're going to go all in. I hope, Robert, like you said, that they deal with how the public reacts to Sam. I don't know,
And I
because
don't need it.
that's where it takes more guts, right?
I
When
don't need
it's
it to
like
be the
we're
whole
going to lose
movie.
money.
I don't need it to be the whole movie, but I need to
No,
see
but it's
that
got to be in
reaction.
there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's very disingenuous. And I realize that comics and superhero movies are, for the most part, supposed to be escapist entertainment. I get that. But if you're going in and with knowing what you're doing, go in and commit.
I have a so with the release of Black Panther and its sequel, do you feel like they went in a genuine way and portrayed the character the way that from the comics that was so meaningful for so many people?
I'm gonna let Brian go first here. Yep, I just did that. See that bus come in there?
I think that Black Panther specifically runs into obstacles when it comes to when you say how Black Panther was portrayed that inspired so many people. I think what the MCU did well was they definitely defined and rooted Wakanda and gave us an aspect of storytelling that I think well, I'm just gonna say myself that I never thought I'd see on a big screen. With that being said, I think that a lot of aspects of Black Panther, unfortunately, are I'm gonna say substituted for other aspects. Specifically, so when okay, comparison comics, Black Panther, a lot of the time you have scientific, otherworldly aspects associated with Wakanda that basically makes it a utopia. In the MCU, there was definitely much more of a socio-political climate that they zoned in on, specifically when you talk about how much they built or put into Killmonger's story. So I feel like right there, because in a lot of ways, and I argue. My wife tries to keeps me honest as much as she can, but she comes for me every time I say this. But I feel like the first Black Panther movie was more actually a Killmonger movie than an actual focus on T'Challa. I'm just going to go on into World of Wakanda. There were things that were handled beautifully that we all know that had to do with Chadwick Boseman's tribute. But then, if you want to look at, if you again, we're looking at from there what inspires. us. We're looking at, or what is inspiring about Black Panther. Shuri almost immediately denounces Black Panther. She's like, it's a relic. It's not necessarily anything. Queen Mother asks her, what about the Black Panther? She was like, what about the Black Panther? And ultimately, Namor is introduced, and then you kind of get more of a conflict that has to do with sides being pitted against each other. And then you kind of see that same vibe in Black Panther. One of the things that I was actually disappointed with was the fact that you have Wakandans set upon Wakandans, and in the comics, depending on which run you're talking about, there's definitely going to be infighting and things like that. But there's also an idea of this higher notion of society that exists within an African nation that no one would ever know about. And I feel like that is unfortunately what more or less is not focused on enough. If I answered your question.
I am satisfied.
Robert, that was cold, man.
I never claimed to be a nice person. I'm just polite.
That's not true.
Shut up, Steph. Wow. Black Panther, I think, did a number of things. Well, at the time, I called it the blackest thing that Marvel's ever done, because quite frankly, it was the blackest thing that Marvel had ever done. And then I countered that the following year when Falcon and the Winter Soldier came out and said that was the blackest thing they've ever done, because the scene in the first episode where Sam goes to the bank for a loan, the guy's like, hey, you saved the world. That's great. I can't give you a loan. I'm like, nope, blackest thing Marvel's ever done. What the first Black Panther movie did, and I'm not sure that I can entirely disagree with Brian in saying that it's a Killmonger movie with Black Panther in it. But I think that we got more about Black Panther and T'Challa in Civil War, than we got more about what makes him tick and how he conducts himself in that movie. Whereas in this one, it's basically like, okay, well, I'm Black Panther now, and I've got to deal with this. Oh, and there's the guy who killed my father, and here's my cousin who's taking the throne. And Killmonger, I don't want to say he stole the movie, but he catalyzed everything that made Black Panther reactive in that movie. Now, that being said, I appreciated the fact that people were introduced to the fact that even within the nation of Wakanda, which is not as utopic as the comic book version, there was, for the most part, there was a lot of harmony. The five tribes worked well together. You could see people just living their lives in their day-to-day fashion when they were in the marketplace and what have you. And I think that to that point, I think that a lot of people just kind of homogenize Black culture as being one thing when it is so many different things that come together as the Black experience. Seeing that there were differences between the tribes, they did different things within Wakanda was hopefully eye-opening, that we're not all just carbon copy. No culture is. It's not a cookie cutter. What I appreciated about Wakanda Forever was a kind of another look at culture, and for me, one of the things I appreciated most about that movie was the homegoing service for T'Challa, and even to a lesser degree, Queen Ramonda. Because I think that a lot of people are like, why are they celebrating? Because I don't think that the concept of celebration at a funeral, outside of getting rip-roaring drunk maybe and doing things that are horribly untoward, would really occur to anybody. And I know that in Black culture, they're modern in the modern day. not often called funerals. It is a homegoing service, and you celebrate that somebody has moved on to go home and be at peace, be at rest, and be with their ancestors. And I think that was something that was hopefully eye-opening for a number of people. Were there flaws? Yes, and Brian covered those wonderfully. But I think that there were things to be taken from the movie that were positive.
Absolutely. I mean, I enjoyed both of those films. That's my input for that. That's what I will add. I would love to keep talking about this all night, but I'm always the one who's telling these guys to make it shorter. So I guess just to kind of
This is our
wrap it up.
longest episode.
I think
Longest
so. Yeah.
episode yet. Yeah.
I can only blame myself. Yeah, I guess
that's who I can blame too. So
Well, I appreciate the fact that you let us run long and that you let us have these discussions. I hope that it opens up more discussions with people who listen to the podcast, people who watch the YouTube video, and that they reach out to people that they might not have otherwise done so, that they learn something about characters and creators that they might not have known about before, and take that and go forward with it, and hopefully not just learn about it themselves, but introduce others to them and just broaden the experience.
Yeah. I think like a final thought, I'd love to hear who everyone would like to see like a full feature film or like a big budget HBO series about, out of kind of the list that was presented or anyone that they had in mind. And then any final thoughts that you guys had before we say goodnight. So no pressure.
No, none at all. I want an Ebony White series. No, I do not.
That's a bold take, Robert.
That's my hot take. I wouldn't mind seeing. There's been talk of an actual live-action static movie coming out of DC, but with the reshuffling of everything, that may be a while. I would like to see somebody do something more with Naomi, really, because I think that was hardly underserved on CW. But again, it's a DC character. Who knows? The Superman movie that has theoretically got Michael B. Jordan attached to it still. I would actually like to see them pull that off.
I like to sing anything Michael B. Jordan pulls off.
Wow.
I'll let you take that however you want to take that.
Oh my.
I think like Robert would mention, I loved Queen Ramonda. I love Shuri in the first Black Panther. She was amazing, and as well as in Wakanda Forever. But I feel like Angela Bassett stole the show in Wakanda Forever with her portrayal of the Queen Mother. Mm-hmm. And I was reading a little bit about her origin story and where she came from, and I feel like that would be a fantastic, if not full-length feature film, like a short series.
Queen Ramonda, I think, was the most Wakandan thing in Wakanda Forever.
But she wasn't Wakandan.
She was not. not by definition. But attitude.
Yes.
Without a doubt. I think another wild theory I had was, what if she would have took up the mantle? Because I felt like I believed in her more than anyone else at that point. But on your question, I gotta say, going back to Falcon and Winter Soldier, okay, the actor who played Isaiah Bradley was the great Carl Lumbly. All right, now Carl Lumbly, you know him from Justice League, Martian Manhunter, and he actually did a series. There was a series way back in the 90s. There was a series that had a pilot episode with Sam Raimi attached to the series called The Mantis.
That was a whole series. It was just a pilot. It was a whole series.
It was a whole series. But the
Yes.
pilot, though, the pilot is what hit the hardest. It what for me. I remember it was something I remember just catching and seeing and just being wide-eyed and just like, what is this? And so you had this technological, hero, this intellect, and what he did was he was actually paralyzed, but when he donned this suit that he himself designed, he was able to walk again, and he had this vehicle that was actually able to fly, and he would he was mantis, so he had his shots, his mantis shots that would freeze you in motion, and so I want to take that energy. So I'm not asking for a mantis remake. I want to take that energy, and I want to go straight into even give me Carl Lumbly as the lead, but I want a hardware series in that same vein, hard hitting HBO Max tone darkness is what I think I'd go for. Is
Have you read the most recent hardware series, Brian?
No, I am behind. I
Okay.
Stacks.
Okay, I'm just saying that was handled well, and it dovetails into the current Icon versus hardware.
Which I'm so excited about.
So, and the first issue of that was good.
Just this week, wasn't it? Like
just this past week.
Yeah. Okay.
Just not the hype. No pressure.
What about you two down here?
I would love to see a live action Static Shock. I again just love the TV series. I always wished that I could be his friend, Richie. That's the tech genius, and just the dynamic that Static had. I mean, just the energy that show gave off was something that I didn't really see from a lot of the other superhero shows at the time. It was just very fun and I don't know. I just really enjoyed it.
Collin, is that why you do what you do? Is that?
Yep, that's it. That's why. That's the origin story.
Hey, we just leveled up.
Thanks, man.
I don't know. I really hope that the new Captain America movie is well done and is good. Sam deserves it. I want to see a good version of Storm on the big screen or on a series, because she's one of my favorite X-Men characters, and I don't think we've done her justice in the films yet at all.
You don't want another Jean Grey story over and over and over again? Who is anyways, sorry, that's another that's another episode.
And I'm really hoping that the Lantern series that comes out is really going to be John Stewart and Hal Jordan as partners, and not a Hal Jordan series where John Stewart is sidekick.
Oh, wait a minute. Lethal Weapon in space.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, I think that's the fear that I have with that series, is that Hal Jordan's going to be the guy and John Stewart's going to be there to keep him in line or whatever.
Just to say, I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah.
That's an old reference for you guys.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks.
I'm always here to help.
Yep. Anyway, we're almost at 2 hours, so we should probably end the show, Steph.
Jake, always here to help. Yeah.
Speaking of keeping people in line.
I appreciate all the effort and work that went into this episode, especially with your slideshow. It was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you.
So yeah, we'd love to have everyone join us, listen, watch, share this, and then join us for the rest of our episodes as well. We are like a series, not just a one-off. Stop laughing at me, Jane.
I'm not laughing at you. None of this is funny. This is all serious business here, Steph.
And we'd like to thank Brian again for being on our show today.
Thank you for having me.
I was going to say you could plug yourself, but do you have any plugs you want to do? You're kind of a private human being.
No plugs. I'm just happy to be here, happy to contribute. It's always a pleasure.
And we appreciate you being here. He's been on some Cutscenes and Cupcakes episodes, so go through, listen to all of them to find the 1 or 2 or 3 with Brian in it. Check out our Discord, link below and in the show notes. And other than that, thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night whenever you listen.
This has been an Age of Geek media production.